At some point you became your own spokesperson, not in a cute way, not in a self-love way, in a quiet, professional way, like someone hired a PR agency inside your skull, gave it your name and told it one job: keep the brand alive. And that brand is you. You think your brain is a news center. Cameras on, lights on, reporters on the street, facts coming in, truth being processed, reality delivered. But it's not a newsroom, it's a PR agency. And the first rule of PR isn't accuracy. It's plausibility. It's consistency. It's protecting the client from bad press, especially the kind that comes from inside. Because if you lived the raw truth, if you actually allowed every contradiction, every shameful motive, every petty craving, every fear you pretend you don't have to sit fully in your chest, something would crack. Not your logic, your identity. So instead you live a story, and your brain works overtime to make sure that story feels like truth. You're in the kitchen, the light from the fridge painting your face like a confession booth. It's late. Your phone is in one hand. Your other hand is grazing the shelf like you're browsing a store that only sells comfort. You're not hungry. You're not even craving the food. You're craving the moment after the first bite, when your nervous system goes quiet for 3 seconds, like someone turned down the static. And if you were a news center, the headline would be simple: I'm trying to numb something. But the PR agency doesn't run that. It runs, I deserve a little treat. It's been a long day. That's not a lie in the dramatic sense. It's a lie in the functional sense. A lie with a job. A lie that keeps the story intact. This is where we have to talk about confabulation. Confabulation is the brain's talent for filling in missing pieces with something that looks believable. Not necessarily true. Believable. A person might forget why they walked into a room and then invent a reason that feels right. Or they might make a choice for a messy emotional reason and then, without even noticing, explain it with a clean, adult-sounding logic. The explanation isn't always cynical. It's often sincere. That's the terrifying part, because you can be honest in tone and still be fictional in content. Your brain confabulates the way your phone autocorrects. It doesn't ask, is this what you meant? It asks, what would make sense to you? And then it hits send. That's how your narrative self stays stable. The narrative self isn't just your personality, it's your internal autobiography, updated in real time with edits, redactions, and a public-facing version for other people. It's the reason you can wake up and feel like the same person you were yesterday. Without it, your life would feel like a folder full of unsorted clips, moments with no thread, feelings with no owner, a constant glitching between versions of you, so your brain threads it together, even if it has to stitch with cheap fabric, even if it has to use plausible lies. And you do this all day. You're in a meeting. Someone makes a comment that lands wrong. Maybe it's dismissive, maybe it's a subtle power move, maybe it's just careless. You feel heat in your face, a tiny spike in your chest. Your body knows before your mind admits it. You feel small. But your PR agency cannot allow that headline, not in public, not even in private. So it reframes. It didn't bother me. They're just insecure. I don't care what people think. I'm above this. Your nervous system is doing trauma accounting in a spreadsheet, and your mouth is reading a press release. And later, when you replay it in the shower, your brain edits the memory so you come off better. You imagine a sharper response you could have said. You revise your facial expression. You rewrite the scene like a director saving the protagonist from humiliation. That's not just vanity, it's ego defense. Ego defense sounds like a therapy term you'd hear in a beige room, but it's not about being weak. It's about being intact. Your ego is the part of you that says, I'm a coherent person. It's the structure that holds your self-image upright, and like any structure, it has load-bearing beams. Confabulation is one of them. So is cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is what happens when you hold two incompatible things at once. I'm a good person. I just did something I'd judge someone else for. That friction isn't just intellectual, it's physiological. It's like wearing a shirt that itches and pretending you don't feel it. Your brain hates that itch. So it resolves the dissonance not always by changing behavior, but by changing the story. I didn't mean it. They deserved it. It wasn't that bad. Everyone does it. I was under pressure. Notice how these aren't usually obvious lies. They're comfort scripts. They sand down the sharp edges of your actions until they fit your identity again. Because if they don't fit, you don't just feel guilty, you start to feel unmade. And this is where the uncomfortable argument lives. Deceiving yourself isn't a mistake. It's a feature, a survival feature. If you saw yourself with perfect clarity all the time, you might not be able to function. Not because you're uniquely terrible, because humans are messy. We're built out of contradiction. We love people and resent them. We want freedom and want someone to hold us. We want to be seen and want to disappear. We want meaning and want comfort. We want to be honest and want to be adored. If every one of those contradictions hit your conscious mind with full force, you wouldn't become enlightened. You'd become unstable. You'd sit on your bed and feel the floor moving under your identity, like the world lost its gravity. So your brain does what any good PR agency does. It protects the client, it spins, it edits, it reframes, it distracts. It buries the story you don't want to live under a story you can survive. Here's the twist, the trapdoor moment. Most people think they lie to others more than they lie to themselves. It's the opposite. You can handle being hated by strangers. You cannot handle being a stranger to yourself, so you keep yourself familiar, even if it's fake, especially if it's fake. Because familiarity is calming. It's a warm room even when the air is stale, and that's the deeper layer. Your sense of truth is often just the version of you that doesn't threaten your belonging. Belonging matters more than accuracy. Your mind would rather be wrong and connected than right and alone. That's why you'll defend your story even when the evidence is loud. Because your story isn't just an opinion, it's shelter. And this is where the line between honesty and sanity gets thin. People talk about radical honesty like it's a cleanse, like you just rinse yourself in truth and come out shining. But there's a reason the brain doesn't do that by default. Truth isn't always safe. Not socially, not emotionally, not neurologically. If you stripped away every defense mechanism in one day, you wouldn't become a perfectly authentic person. You'd become raw. And raw isn't noble. Raw is exposed nerve. Think about your life as a movie. Your brain is constantly editing. Confabulation is the background music, covering the awkward silence. Cognitive dissonance is the jump cut when the plot doesn't make sense. Ego defense is the lighting that makes the protagonist look heroic, even in scenes where they're being petty. And then there's the narrator. The narrator is your narrative self. And the narrator is not neutral. The narrator is loyal. The narrator will explain your worst moment as an exception and explain someone else's worst moment as their character. That's not because you're evil. It's because the narrator works for you. Or more accurately, it works to keep you alive inside your own skin. Micro scene number 3. You're scrolling on your phone at night, thumb moving like a metronome. You see people living lives that look cleaner than yours. Better bodies, better love, better mornings, better everything. Your chest does that subtle sync. Your brain immediately manufactures something to hold on to. They're faking it. They're probably miserable. They got lucky. I don't even want that life. Maybe some of those are true, but the speed matters. The speed is the giveaway. A news center investigates. A PR agency responds instantly because the threat isn't factual. It's emotional. It's existential. It's the threat of believing, maybe I'm falling behind. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe I'm not lovable. And your brain will invent almost anything to avoid letting those words become your reality. So where does that leave you? If the brain is a PR agency, not a news center, if the narrative self is a story engine, if confabulation and dissonance reduction are built in, then what are you supposed to do? You can't just rip out the machinery. That's like smashing your car because you don't like the speedometer. The goal isn't to become a cold, fact-only robot. That's not truth. That's a different kind of delusion. The delusion that humans can live without stories. You need a story, but you need a story that doesn't quietly poison you. So the exit isn't stop lying to yourself. The exit is learning how to catch the spin, learning how to renegotiate your relationship with your own narrator. Here are 3 realistic shifts. Not inspirational, strategic, biological. Something you can actually do without turning your life into a self-improvement cult. First shift. Separate facts from press releases. This sounds simple, but it's rare. When you feel something intense, shame, jealousy, anger, fear, your brain instantly starts talking, explaining, justifying, blaming, rewriting. The trick is to treat the first explanation as suspicious, not evil, suspicious, because it's probably a press release. So you do something small, you label it, not I'm such a mess, but my PR agency is issuing a statement. Not they're disrespecting me, but my ego is protecting status. Not "I'm fine, but I'm trying to be fine." This tiny distance changes everything, because it turns the narrator from the driver into a passenger, and you stop confusing intensity with truth. Second shift. Practice controlled truth, not total truth. There's a fantasy that if you face everything, you'll be free. Sometimes you face everything and you just collapse on the floor emotionally and call it growth. Controlled truth is different. Controlled truth is like strength training. You don't walk into the gym and deadlift a truck. You pick a weight you can hold without your form breaking. So you choose one area where your story is obviously protecting you. Something manageable, not your deepest wound, not the big existential stuff. Maybe it's your work story. "I'm just busy." And the truth is, "I'm scared if I slow down I'll feel empty." Or your relationship story, "I don't care." And the truth is, "I care too much and it scares me." You let yourself tell the truth in a private place, in a private moment. You don't blast it on the internet. You don't weaponize it. You don't turn it into performance. You just let your nervous system learn, "I can survive reality." That's the real upgrade. Not enlightenment, capacity. Third shift. Build an environment that doesn't demand constant spin. Most self-deception isn't purely internal, it's contextual. Your brain spins harder when it's under threat. When your life is built like a stage. When you're constantly being evaluated by bosses, by metrics, by likes, by dating apps, by the silent competition of everyone pretending they're fine. So you design spaces where you can stop performing. This is attention hygiene. It might mean fewer apps that turn your life into a scoreboard. It might mean one friend you can speak to without editing yourself into someone more impressive. It might mean doing one thing each day that isn't optimized, monetized, or shared. A walk without tracking it. A meal without photographing it. A morning without checking the world's opinion of you. Because the PR agency is louder when the audience is always present. And the audience is always present now. We carry it in our pockets. So if you want less self-deception, you don't just think differently. You live differently. You reduce the need for spin. Now, here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. Some of your lies are holding you together. If you pull them out too fast, you don't become free. You become fragmented. That's why the fine line between honesty and sanity exists. Because sanity, in a very practical sense, is the ability to keep a stable narrative under pressure. A mind that can't stitch meaning is a mind that starts to drift. So the goal isn't to destroy your narrative self. It's to make it less corrupt, to make it stop gaslighting you, to teach it the difference between protection and sabotage. Because there's a kind of self-deception that's merciful. It keeps you moving through hard seasons. It keeps you from drowning in contradictions. And there's a kind of self-deception that slowly turns your life into a haunted house you pretend is a home. Same mechanism, different outcome. One is a cast for a broken bone, temporary support. The other is a cage with nice wallpaper. And the scariest part is you won't notice which one you're living in, because the wallpaper is your own handwriting. So here's the final thought, and it's not comfortable. You don't just have beliefs, beliefs have you. Your story isn't just something you tell. It's something that tells you what you're allowed to feel, what you're allowed to want, what you're allowed to admit. And if you've been living inside a story that keeps your ego safe, but keeps your soul small, then the real question isn't, what's the truth? The real question is, which lie are you calling sanity? Because you're afraid of the person you'd become without it.